Welcome back to the Peak Sports Psychiatry Podcast, brought to you by 43 Degree Sports, changing the game in athlete hygiene. Every athlete knows the post-game ritual. Toss the sweaty gear in the bag and deal with it later. That's when bacteria goes to work. The 43-degree temperature-controlled hockey bag uses advanced technology to silently kill up to 96% of odor-causing bacteria. No chemicals, no sound, no smell, just safe, effective heat and airflow that works while you rest. Trusted by pros and parents across North America. Learn more at 43degreesports.com. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Peak Sports Psychiatry Podcast. If you want to improve outcomes in mental health, you don't start in crisis. You start upstream.
And no one lives more upstream than primary care physicians.
We've been having a lot of conversations lately about how mental health is discussed in sports, but today we want to focus on where those conversations actually turn into action, primary care.
Today we're joined by someone who has built his entire practice around proactive, preventative, and performance-oriented care, and who understands athletes, wellness, and longevity at a very deep level.
Dr. Anthony Lyssy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me. When I got invited to help Tommy out, I couldn't say no. We go way back, roommates in medical school, and he introduced me to my wife. So anything Tommy needs from me is always a yes. But seriously, I'm happy to be here with you guys and look forward to chatting about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is upstream, preventative, proactive wellness. And I think it ties in beautifully with what you guys do with your athletes. So let's get it started.
Awesome. I love that, Anthony. I appreciate you bringing that up at the very beginning, our ties back to medical school. And, I was thinking about that, going off script for a second. I mean, we're all physicians here, but I think that the osteopathic philosophy that was hammered into us from like day one, proactive preventative care. And it's great that it's still built in, I think, to our mission and kind of what we do in both of our practices. But your practice has grown tremendously over the years. So can you take us back into your thinking as we were just, trying to figure it all out in medical school and how you came into doing what you do today?
Yeah. My route may be a little bit different than most. A lot of docs going to college, knowing that's what they want to do. I knew one thing going into college is that I wanted to go to the University of Texas at Austin. I was a Longhorn, burnt,
Go Horns, baby.
blood burn orange. Yeah, hook 'em. Blood burn orange. My father went there, and it's all I ever wanted to do. And ironically enough, one of the biggest barriers I had as growing up, I was very unhealthy kid. I was out of shape. I was the overweight kid, and I dealt with a lot of things that comes with that. And my mom was a nurse, and she was always on me to try to be optimal health and wellness. My dad was really supportive, but it had to come from the inside. And something clicked right about junior, senior year, and I started committing myself to take better care of the little things, the details, right? The processes of how we eat and how we move and how we sleep and how we recover. And lo and behold, it started spilling in everything. In all aspects of my life. My grades started getting better. I started having better social interaction, engagement, better relationships. And then I got into Texas, which was my dream. And then at Texas, I started realizing that, wow, if I just take that application of focusing on the details, focusing on the process, committing to doing things the right way, there's nothing I can't do. And I always in the back of my head was interested in healthcare in general. I think my ability to reshape my life and undergo a transformational experience really was the impetus for me to say, hey, I can be that guy for others. I can help others get to where they want to be with a training path and a training plan and data. And so I started down that path in my course load. And then that's funny, Tommy, you mentioned going to osteopathic school. A lot of people get in to a DO school because they didn't get to the MD school. That was actually my first choice. And I chose that because of the reason that you mentioned, and that one of the biggest focuses on osteopathic medicine is the connected nature of mind, body, spirit, preventative aspect of things, making sure that everything was a tight, cohesive state of wellness. And that's how we get our downstream benefits, and that's how life would flow. And really, that's what drove me there. And that's, as I went through that training, I became, better at finding those barriers and focusing on how to work upstream to find that keystone that everything downstream would flow from if we got that one rate limiting step taken care of. And I think one of the things that you find is that it's not easy. And in the traditional healthcare model, you don't really have the time to find that one thing. You have to match the pill to the ill, as some would say, and you have to basically just treat numbers. And you don't get to sit down with a patient and really get to find out what makes them tick, what the barriers are, what their goals are, and what the limitations of those things are. And so naturally, I was at a crossroads. I said, "Hey, I'm pretty deep. I'm pretty pot committed on this whole medicine thing, and I don't really like the way that it's going. So there's got to be a better option." So essentially, I saw that yes, concierge medicine was out there, functional medicine was out there. I ended up kind of doing a hybrid of both and creating a membership based wellness practice that allowed me to have quality over quantities from a patient standpoint. The membership fee allowed me to not have to work with insurance companies and create a tight knit, cohesive group of patients that I could work with very extensively, sit down with them, visit at extended levels to find those barriers of their wellness goals, work to overcome those barriers, and then track and trend and respond and audible until we finally got where we wanted to go. It's funny. We'll talk a little bit about sports. I'm obviously a big golfer. And I think one of the things that I see in the game of golf is that it's kind of the unfinished symphony. It's always striving for the best. No one's ever birdied every hole. No one's ever have a perfect round. It's kind of like life, right? So we're always trying to get 1% better every day. And I think that when we look at sports or golf or medicine or life, it's always that can we just find a way to keep moving forward, one step in front of the other, get a little bit better every day, give ourselves some grace, and be able to say, hey, let's just constantly be in a state of growth and let's focus on the journey rather than the outcome. And essentially, that's where I am and what I do.
Mark, can you imagine being a roommate with this guy in medical school? He's just firing me up right now. Like I'm ready to run through a wall. And, Anthony used to be running out the door on his training runs. And I'd be like, oh man, I just need to sit here with my baby robins and just, and read. and, and I didn't realize at the time, and he still inspires me. He said, we could never run a marathon, if you don't train for it. And damn it, if I didn't run a marathon a couple years ago because of this guy. So thank you, Anthony.
Well, it's funny. We have something in common, Tommy, aside from lots of other things. But that my roommate in medical school was actually training for an Ironman, and so I had to watch him go to the pool and go on these long runs and long cycling rides and stuff. And so yeah, definitely at the time and got me to get going a little bit. So Anthony, it's awesome to talk to you. I did have a question. So why the University of Texas? What was the obsession there? I came from a family of Longhorns. It was actually a split family, those and Sooners. And so when I go to the Texas OU game, I had to kind of pick a side, but it was usually the Texas side. So just wondering.
Yeah. It's much like my son now. He sees it from me. He sees the passion. I saw it from my dad. My dad graduated there 30 years before I did. And so it's all I ever knew. I went to games growing up.
Nice.
I didn't want it any other way. I loved everything about the idea of the school, the tradition. Basically, it was the nice connection between me and my father. And I always looked at that very fondly. And I think, now I've got that with my son. Obviously, his dream is to attend the University of Texas. He's a very big competitive junior golfer, so he'll have to factor golf in there and figure out what direction he's going to go with that. But I think it's neat because when you find something like that you can connect with your father in and you have that passion together, it's just, Tommy gets it with the Irish. And I think there's one thing about that, and I see it really in the collegiate game more than I do in the professional game. It's just this pull, this tugging of the heartstrings, this emotional connection. And usually there's generational aspects to this too. And that was what it was for me.
That's awesome. So earlier you were kind of talking about some of your challenges with health growing up. And then I wanted to go a little bit deeper. Can you tell me about what that was like? And then how did movement and running really become part of your plan?
Yeah, I think like most people experience, the human bodies want to, they want to settle in a comfortable situation, and I think that's something that I struggled with is being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, right? Finding comfort in the discomfort. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I certainly did. And I think once you force yourself to get outside of your comfort zone, and many people do it for various reasons. I have this conversation with my patients. I say, look, if I brought you into my office and gave you a 10-question quiz on health and wellness, you're probably going to be able to answer 9 out of 10 correct. If I asked you how many of those things are you doing, it's probably 4 or 5. So inherently, it's the knowing and the doing gap, right? There's a great book written by a couple Stanford professors about this. And essentially, it is, how do we bridge that knowing and the doing gap, right? How do we get you out of your comfort zone, which is typically what has to happen before you start doing the things you know how to do? And that's what it was for me. There was one single event that finally pushed me over the edge, and it had to do with a girl, like most things in adolescence. It was basically kind of a realization that, hey, I'm probably not going to have the life I want to socially and relationship wise unless I start taking care of myself and loving myself and growing myself. And sure enough, that's what happened, right? And so now I take that and I remember those difficulties, and I remember those difficult steps. I remember the times that it was easy. I remember the time that it was hard. And I try to identify that the thing that got me through that was I was able to give myself some grace. I was able to understand that it was a journey. I was able to understand that every day, if I just did one thing to get myself a little bit better, at some point, I might not get where I want, but I'm going to get somewhere better than I am right now. And so for me, that's what I really identified with. And I think that aspect of trying to find some comfort in the discomfort goes a long way for a lot of people. And I think once you can start to help people identify that and identify that it's okay not to be okay, and you guys do this every day in your world with the mental health aspect of things, I think it pairs beautifully into that, not only physically, but also mentally. I think people have to have a little bit of grace and they have to have a little understanding that look, I'm not going to flip the switch. This is not going to get better overnight, whether you're dealing with blood pressure, diabetes, weight issues, healthcare, mental health issues, right? It has to be, what are the things that I'm going to do today that's going to get me a little bit closer to that goal? And again, we talk about sports and we talk about athletes. They do that every single day in their training. So I think that when you bring everything together, there's some very special points that people have to understand. One, it's what am I going to do today to get a little bit better? And if I don't accomplish that, how was that discomfort and how did I handle it? And how can I handle it next time? And if you continue down those paths, you'll do great. So my job right now is basically to use data to allow people to have a better idea of where they stand, right? I want to create a personalized plan for that individual. Because one of the things I see out there is that people will come in and say, hey, here's my goal. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to look this way. I want to have that outcome. I want to get off this medicine. And now, especially more than ever, they're like, ChatGPT told me to do this. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. All right, hang on. I get that. And while that might be true for the majority of people, I think you may not be a good responder to that plan. And here's why, right? Here's why I think this plan is better for you. And so for me, I was able to say, I want to create protocols that allow me to have the data that bridge that knowing and the doing gap. I sit down with people with data in hand, and we can get into this in a little bit about what I do and how I do it. But I find that data helps people to own their plan and get peace of mind on what they're doing. And the best part about that too is data is motivating, because guess what I can do with data? I can track that serially over time, and I can check in and I can say, hey, of all your metrics, you've improved in these. You haven't improved in these. We can pull back a little here. We can add a little here. And that helps bridge the knowing and the doing gap as well. So I use data. I use personalized approach to what are those triggers? What are those things what are your whys? That's another thing that bridges the knowing and the doing gap is your whys, your WH whys. Why do you want to do this? Why are you worried about this? Well, I lost someone close to me, or my father died of a heart attack, or I can't go play golf anymore with the guys, or I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. Anything that we can grab onto and allow people to say, that's my guiding light. That's my why. That's going to bridge the knowing and the doing gap. When I don't want to do this, I'm going to think about that. And I have to kind of be the bad guy sometimes and hold them accountable. I have to be an accountability partner for them. And I always keep those things in the back of my mind. I bring those up in our visits and our meetings. So I think those are the key things that I experienced going through my transformation. And I think that I use those, and I rely on that experience personally to understand how it is and how difficult it is, but more importantly, be a better leader for them as they go through those transformational experiences.
Yeah, data.
Okay, now I want to run through a wall. Nice.
Mark, we've been talking a lot about data. Mental health is kind of the final frontier with performance, I think. What's the right data platform to use? There's new ones that are kind of evolving. What are those data points? Are they accurate? Are they measurable? Are they useful? But Anthony's very detail oriented here. And I think you've kind of talked about how it's gone from your lived experience as a youth and as a physician, and that the population that you're working with, I think it really meshes well with your philosophy. So how did you decide with all your training to go into primary care and a sports population? You've kind of refined that over time. You could have seen just executives or just, why athletes? And I think you've led into that with what you were just talking about, but give us a little more sense of how you honed in on this population.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Yes, I take care of plenty of athletes. I take care of a lot of executives too. I would say I'm split, and a lot of my athletes are executives as well too. And so, whether they're professional athletes or weekend warriors, I think the unique thing about all those individuals that I work with, there's a key point that they all share, and that is they're striving to be the best version of themselves. Their performance, whether it's in the boardroom or on the field or on the course or on the court, it's all predicated on how healthy they are, how well their body allows them, their body and mind allows them to perform up to their best. And so it naturally happened that way. It naturally draws a clientele like that when you do the things that I do, because generally people are not going to be drawn to a model like this. They're not going to want to financially invest, but physically and mentally invest the time and effort into something like this unless there is a direct outcome that's going to help them do better in whatever their core competency is, whether that's life, business, or sports. And so, interestingly enough, that's really kind of the old you build it and they will come type of thing. I mean, this is really how it was. I basically said, hey, I want to work with high performance individuals in any walk of life. Now, what's unique about that is as you draw those individuals, you I don't market. I don't market my practice, and I'm lucky to not have to do this. But my patients do my marketing for me because they talk and they talk about what they get and they talk about what they experience, and more importantly, they talk about the relationship that we built. And I think that's how it's really grown organically. I started getting, I probably work with 10 or 15, 20 maybe guys on the PGA Tour and help them in various aspects of their wellness and work with their teams. I do consulting, wellness testing for the Dallas Stars, which has been a lot of fun. Obviously, big Stars fan here in Dallas. But again, that all happened organically. I didn't go out and say, I want to do this. I didn't go out there and start marketing towards those individuals. I went out there and started doing what I knew and trained to do and built a model that supported individuals like this wanting to use my services. And so it's kind of funny how that organically happened, but you look back at really the genesis of that, and it makes sense. It's that high performance individual that wants better data. Those guys they're relying on their bodies and minds to support them in the highest of performance situations.
Well, I'm
And
sorry, but you're going to get more marketing here with this podcast and our 100 faithful subscribers. It's going to grow probably hundreds of thousands after the Monte Ball episode drops.
Love
Monte's
that.
a friend of the podcast, and we had a great conversation with him a couple weeks ago, and just a lot of other just great athletes and providers. It's good to have. We haven't had that many psychiatrists, family physicians, sports medicine. We're going to get more into people like yourself though, because I think it balances well with having the athletes and then having the people who support them and kind of hearing the different philosophies. But you talk about accountability. So Mark, I was going through Dallas from Austin to St. Louis, and Dr. Lyssy here practices what he preaches, because it was like, I want to say it was New Year's Day or the next day, and I was coming from a Pat Green concert, wasn't feeling that great myself. I said, do you want to meet up at 7 a.m.? And he's like, no, I got to be at the gym at like 6 a.m. And I'm like, oh boy, man, he's all in. So Anthony, is that something like with this population, do you get that personal fulfillment and that accountability that you've got to answer all 10 of those health questions yourself the right way?
yeah, without a doubt. People joke around about that a lot, but I do it for a lot of reasons. I do it, number one, for my mental health. I have to have it. It's an outlet for me. I don't like to do things or say things or ask people to do things if I don't do them myself. So I have to get comfortable in the discomfort. I have to do the things that are difficult for me. I have to get up and go to the gym when I'd rather go, hang out and have a cup of coffee with Tommy. I have to do the things that are going to make me a better leader for my patients and my family. And I have to lead by example. I think you lose credibility if you don't do those things in the world that I'm in. Ironically, Tommy, the morning I went to the gym, when I missed you guys, our gym in Dallas that we go to, I work with a phenomenal sports performance trainer, Damon Goddard. He's trained some of the best golfers for years. And so we are in there with myself, a lot of my patients, executives, and then a lot of my patients who are athletes, and we're all in there working out together. And Damon's, the drill sergeant, and we've got a professional baseball player, squatting every plate in the gym over there. We've got med balls thrown against the wall over here. We got an executive, doing planks. I mean, it's actually really cool, but it's like, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we do together is we bring all these walks of life in. And what's interesting is everybody that works out there has kind of become my patient anyway. And so those are the fun things we get to do with the people that I work with. And I can, to your point, lead by example and show them that, yes, I'm doing what I ask you guys to do as well. I also really enjoy the journey. I always have. I'm always looking to get 1% better. I tell people all the time, what is your goal? What's your why? Well, one of my whys is, and note the words I use when I say this, I want to play golf the day I die. Now, I'm not saying I want to live to 115. I'm saying I want to do what I love till the day I die. That's our concept of health span, right? I used to say I want to live to 115. I remember looking back in some of I always try to lay goals out and write them down. About 10 years ago, one of my goals was I want to live to 115. And then I started thinking about that. And obviously it's like, well, what if the last 5 years are terrible? What if they're bedridden? Like, I don't want that. I want to be vibrant. I want to be doing what I love till the day that I die. And so that is one of my motivating factors. I want to be able to put the work in to be able to do those things, be able to see my grandkids, be able to play golf. I want to hold my kids and grandkids off on the golf course as long as I can. I don't want them to give me shots. I want to basically shoot my age, as early as I can. I want to do all those things. So that's my why. And so I get it. I have my journey that I'm working on. I have my data. I'm the one in there doing, blood work and getting on my DEXA machine very regularly as well. And I show my staff that I'm doing that. I show my patients that I'm doing that. And I can then get where they're coming from with that. I can relate with them for that.
God, there's so much in there I want to comment on. Oh, you talked about like shooting my age. So I remember when I was a kid, my great uncle broke, he was 80 and he broke 80. And I was like, okay, now that's awesome to be at that age
Awesome.
and still like rocking it out on the golf course. I wish I was able to do that consistently right now. But now that I got you on my team, this is gonna be pretty great. You talk about like primary care as it should be talked about, which is a place to go where there's a why. You're not just like going through the motions because you were the in-network physicians because I think I may have high blood pressure. Go talk to them. No, you're meeting the patient where they are. You're talking about process orientation versus results orientation. You're talking about the journey. You're talking about the why that they're showing up. You're actually like not just the team quarterback between a bunch of different specialties. You're actually also their coach. And I think that that's really powerful that the people can kind of reframe how they're viewing primary care as a place that they can go to get lots of their needs met. And then you can provide lots and lots of guidance. I mean, that why concept, I think that's definitely going to be probably either the title of the episode or at least a big theme is huge. Because it does, if you're doing really well with healthy diet and exercise and healthy nutrition, not to use even the word diet, that really goes a long way to helping both with physical health and mental health. So I want to kind of go back into your academic background. So you trained in family medicine, you're board certified, then you pursued, and I don't even know what this is, advanced arteriology training. Yet you've intentionally moved away from a reactive model. What pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, the arteriology, functional medicine, all this stuff. I mean, at the time I went through all this, it's not like an extra board certification. It's basically just extra proactive training that I went out in various modules. And so like the arteriology, there's a method, a heart attack and stroke prevention method, the Bale-Deneen method. It's two doctors who created this method that basically looks at aspects of arteriology, advanced lipidology, inflammatory markers, cardiac imaging, vascular imaging. Again, data and personalized approach. Genetics are
Cool.
huge in that with cardiovascular genetics. So I went and trained all that because I knew that while I was going to go out into this route, I had to have as much training and I had to know how to do it really, really well and know the best way to do it. Otherwise, I'm just basically going to be flying by the seat of my pants and guessing. And it's not, I'm not going to be confident in the things that I'm going to do. And I'm certainly not going to be giving people what they're paying for. So I added as much as I could to my practice and my training and my toolbox to, again, go back to the data. What data do we get? what tests do we get? What imaging studies do we get? How do we put it all together? And then how do we manage it? And how do we get that personalized care plan? So I think that's really the reason why I did it. And I'm able now to have all that in the back of my mind. And as I bring other physicians on in my practice, it's kind of fun getting that out of the head and kind of getting it on paper and showing them and them, because I've got docs coming straight out of training and PAs coming out of training. And, they're like, still now, they're like, we don't learn any of this. And I'm like, yeah, I know that's one of the problems with traditional medicine training is you've got to be able to go above and beyond on your own, because as we all know, medical training unfortunately lags about 10 years behind. And the standard of care is, by definition, just enough to not really get sued. And that's not what we're going for here, right? We're going for optimal care. So I think we got to think outside the box as physicians, and we got to say, hey, look, we got to stay up on the current data, and we got to be able to go above and beyond the standard of care. And we have to try new things, and we have to evolve as physicians. And I think that's another thing the model allows me to do. Most of my colleagues who are in the traditional model, who are dealing with insurance and seeing 40 to 50 patients a day and then charting till 9 p.m., the last thing they want to do is sit down and read a white paper on a new treatment module or a new test or a new whatever, right? They just don't have the time. And so unfortunately, you get in the habit of, well, this is the way we've always done it, so this is what we're going to end up doing. And the patient care suffers dramatically from that. And at some point, there's a better way to do it. You probably should learn how to do it, right? And I think that's the other thing when we go and look at how healthcare, unfortunately, has become a little disjointed. One is medical training lags. Two, the requirement of the traditional healthcare or insurance-based healthcare provider just doesn't allow them to do these things, to be very proactive with their patients.
Yeah, they're not going to read about it. But even if they do, they're not going to go out and do it. The new thing, we've taken a back seat to industry, whether it be, new pharmaceutical that's being kind of pushed out there, maybe I'll adopt it, or there's a code for it, maybe I'll adopt it. Well, screw that. You've created a model and a successful one at that. And I think you already hit on it. Like, the reasons why people would sign up for a membership-based model is exactly what you're talking about. It's giving them the edge that they're not going to get in primary care. And, hopefully, your kind of practice pushes, and I'm seeing it already. And I think we see it in mental health too, right? We know that there's like two different systems sometimes, right? You've got the insurance-based and then the cash-based. But I do think that the cash-based model or membership model or concierge, direct care, whatever we're going to call it, is slowly but surely, I think, pushing the mainstream to accelerate a little more. I don't know if you see that, or if you see like mainstream medicine just staying at a snail's pace.
I absolutely see that. I see it in patients or physicians wanting to convert to a model like this. I see it in physicians coming out of training looking to get right into this.
Yeah.
I absolutely see it, and I see the desire, and I see the demand. So one of the things I struggle with is how can I do this for as many people as I can? And this actually kind of got me into some trouble here. We're talking mental health. As physician, I always tell people, and I try to live by this, and that I can't pour from an empty cup, right? If I am run ragged, if I am, watered down because I'm trying to take care of too many people, if I'm burning the candle at both ends and I can't fill my cup up, I cannot be a good leader for you, and I can't be a good husband or parent. And so the problem with that is that's a straight uh, direct opposition to the thought process of I have to say yes to as many people as possible, and I have to take on as many people as possible, because someone will call me and say, you've made such a difference for me. You please take care of my business partner. Please take care of my father, or please take care of my brother. They really need your help. They're getting run through the ringer and the other. And so when I say yes to a situation like that, that turns into 100 yeses. And all of a sudden I'm 100 patients oversubscribed. And now all of a sudden I don't have time to fill my cup up, and I don't have time to do things the right way. And so this is something I've really worked hard on over the last year, which is finally allowing me to invest in the future of my practice more, bring on more providers, train other providers, get PAs to help me, and be able to then create the space that I need to fill my cup up be a better practitioner, evolve my training, but also be able to teach other physicians how to do this and help them to be able to help me and help others. And so that is actually kind of funny you bring that up. And here we are talking about mental health. That's how I have to be able to look at my mental health and figure out that delicate little dance between taking care of as many people as possible, but also protecting my mental health as well. So I can do that for a long time.
Well, that's your why, I mean, you're talking about your own personal why, and I appreciate you spending an hour with us today. It's a cold night in Dallas. You could be, playing games with your family and my why, I guess is I would love for us in our 80s to be playing golf with Jack and Liam and staying out there with you. This is fun stuff. I do want to touch on the team you've built around you and eventually how you guys screen for mental health. But Mark, I know we talk about a lot of this stuff. What's on your mind as far as like practice setup and how he's doing this?
Well, I think the concierge model really takes you back to why people went into medicine in the first place, because they want to have personal relationships with patients. They want to actually help people. They want to spend time with people. They don't want to feel like just a box ticker and just you're filling out forms to hopefully get reimbursement like that. It just, that leads to burnout. So I do wonder, just if you wouldn't mind telling our listening audience about the concierge medicine model, as far as like how, like what's the cadence by which you actually see your patients, how many people are in your practice, what's the size of your practice, how do you screen for mental health issues along with physical health issues? I'm just really curious.
Sure. Happy to give you a little insight. So my practice is, I would say, it's a higher end practice than most concierge practices. And the reason being is that I do probably more upfront testing. I would say the onboarding process when you join my practice is very front loaded. We get an extensive battery of tests on you. We're doing CT angiograms of the heart. We're doing DEXA scans. We're doing VO2 max for cardiorespiratory fitness all in office. We're doing extensive lab data testing. We're doing some genetics. We're doing some functional testing, send home, collections of stool, saliva, urine, all that good stuff, sending it off. So it takes us a while to work in a new patient. And then also we sit down with patients and we spend about 90 minutes running through their entire history, physical history, mental history. We'll talk about that in a second. Trying to figure out, again, what their whys are, what their goals are, where they're coming from health-wise, what their current wellness strategies are. We get really, really in-depth to figure out where we're starting from. And then we put that and their goals together with my data and my goals based on those data points and basically start putting the plan together. Now, it's very front loaded in that first year, we got a lot to optimize. I got to figure out, hey, are we starting with, a broad array of things to address, or, hey, is everything looking pretty good? And we've got these few aspects here of just optimization. And so, I typically am seeing people quarterly that first year, and that allows us to check and see how that first set of interventions or supplements or lifestyle modifications is working. I'm a big believer in not getting too aggressive too soon unless something is really broken. But I like to give people the chance to try things on for size and kind of work into it. And then again, that 3-month mark, we're getting rechecks to see how far we've come, to see what we have left, then 6, 9, 12 months. And then sometimes they get really dialed in after that first 12 months. And we may then talk or have a reach out and a quick email check in. My PA may reach out. There may be a quick call. Hey, everything good? You need anything from me? How's this going? How's that going? And then maybe we're doing every 6-month testing. And so I think it's kind of a first year, very front loaded, quarterly. After that, depending on your response, it's typically quarterly reach outs, quarterly check-ins. Maybe it's every 6 month on the labs and DEXA scans and that sort of thing. So patient panel, I think the average concierge doc kind of runs between about, 200 and 350. My practice works best when I'm at about 250 to 300. I mentioned, it's really hard for me to say no to people, so I'm a little more than that right now.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I'm bringing a PA on, I've hired a great PA who's going to start with me in April. Got a new doctor coming out of training who I've been recruiting for quite a while now. And we finally agreed to a deal, which is going to be exceptional because now I'll be able to add on more patients under her patient panel, give her some of my patients to kind of light the load off me. And then my PA will be able to help be an extension of me for my current patients. And then the goal is to add more doctors on as well. I feel like we've got the protocols down so well now where I can easily teach these other docs how to come in and say, hey, here's the data, right? And here's how to interpret that data. And then from there, just be a doctor, right? Do what you know how to do. But here's the protocols we're going to use and here's the data we're going to get. That being said, I feel that my practice is a little different in that it is a nice blend of kind of this almost like executive medicine feel with the functional preventative medicine feel. And so I think it's the best of both worlds. I think people love the access that they have to me and my staff. It is very high touch points. We are reaching out, we're checking in on them. They have the ability when acute things pop up to reach out. And, you actually said it earlier, and it's funny, on my notes, I wrote the quarterback of patients' health, but you actually commented quarterback and coach. And I actually like that. And I never thought about it that way. But yeah, the coach is obvious, but the quarterback is obvious too, because I have to work them through the system as well. If there's something surgical or something that I identify that needs specialist intervention, I've got to be the one to bridge the gap and basically reach out on their behalf and make sure they kind of get in the back door with the specialist in a quick, timely manner, as opposed to waiting 6 months to see a lot of specialists like unfortunately the general population has to have. You mentioned screening for mental health. That is absolutely something that I do. When I go through my initial assessment, I am asking what they eat, when they eat it, what they do for workout, how their sleep is. And then one last question I ask, and I ask this very open ended because I like them to offer things up. I ask them, how would you describe your headspace in general? How would you describe A, your level of stress, but B, your how you handle your stress? What are the things that you struggle with? Do you deal with anxiety? Do you deal with sleep issues? With that, I can usually get a pretty good insight into something that may be underlying, something that they may be struggling with, something that they may have just said, oh, well, everybody deals with this, it's normal. And then I can really hone in on that, because what I've really discovered over the years is that you want to talk about barriers to wellness, as you guys know, if your mind, body, and spirit are not rowing the same way at once, it's really, really, really hard. I can get them saying, yes, I want to eat this and I want to work out this. But if you don't have motivation because you've got a flat affect because you're dealing with this and that, and you just have no motivation, and it's like you can't engage with your family because you're so depressed from this work stress, it's like everything ties together and it's never going to end up going the way that we want to. And by the way, where's that ultimately going to end up? It's going to end up with no engagement with your physician. And then it's all of a sudden, how can I help you if you're not responding to me, and if you're not coming in for your testing? And so the mental health aspect is so important. And it is something where I've told Tommy about this. Like, I'm not a mental health specialist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist, but I kind of have to play one on TV sometimes because I have to be able to sit there with people. And when I identify those triggers, I have to be able to try to dive in pretty deep and say, okay, well, what have we done? What are we doing? Here's a couple low hanging fruit things that we can start to do. Here's a couple things we can try to improve upon. And then I have to know to stick with that and come back on that and keep checking in on that. And I have to know when to call my guy and say, hey, I need you to see him. He needs better, he needs more than an SSRI for a adjustment disorder kind of thing. I need to know when this person needs better intervention. And luckily, I found some phenomenal psychiatrists in Dallas that I think I've connected Tommy with them before for some mutual patients. I'm very, very blessed to have some unbelievable psychologists and psychiatrists that I'm able to refer to, and they absolutely help me out on those individuals. And what I find is that as soon as they can get that stuff working in the right direction, all my stuff starts working better too, and the patient benefits from it. So that coordination of care is something I do, whether it's specialist or whether it's psychiatry or mental health. I think that's really important, because if I don't identify that, we're spinning our wheels. And obviously, you guys get that, and you guys probably see it as well too, because it goes both ways. If you've got somebody and they're working on headspace issues and they're working on mental health, but their blood sugars are so unstable and their cortisol is so dysregulated and their adrenal health is messed up, all of a sudden, I don't care what you tell them to do or what practices they've got going for the headspace improvement, they're physiologically not going to be able to get to the point where we need to. And so the physical health ties in so intimately with the mental health and vice
you got to
versa.
know where you're starting from, or on both sides, the mental health, the physical health, the spiritual health you mentioned. But you mentioned
Yeah.
protocols, and how do you protocolize mental health is very challenging, and I would say it has to start with so much education on the front end. Even like people who are very educated just might not know. They can understand when you're telling them what to eat or how to work out, but it's amazing how much just basic education is sometimes needed. I mean, how much of your practice is mental health related these days, including using consultants and collaborating, including the preventative screening, and just because there's a lack of protocol, or maybe you've got a great one that's trademarked and we'll have to talk later, but yeah, like
The Lyssy method.
yeah, we got to introduce it on this podcast, but like, does that make sense? Like if you can't protocolize it, do you struggle with that?
I do. And, it's easy. I can sit here and I can put you on my DEXA scanner and I can know exactly what your visceral fat is. I can know what your appendicular lean mass is. I can put you on my VO2 bike and I can tell you exactly what your cardiorespiratory fitness is. Both of those things delicately correlate to longevity, and we can absolutely correlate it down to the number and figure out progress as we go. I can't do that with mental health. I can't sit there and say, hey, based on this test, boy, we didn't know it, but man, you're depressed. Like there's no blood test for that, right? And yeah, I can give you all the, I can give you all the screening tests and this and that. But I just sit there and I listen to the individual and I hear them talk and I ask them what their barriers are. I ask them what they've struggled with in the past. And many times too, it's something that maybe I'm not getting that on the initial assessment. That may be something that they kind of swept under the rug, but they keep coming back to me. And for whatever reason, we keep hitting these barriers, or maybe it's a sleep aspect. And then I really start to dig into this and say, and hang on a minute, I think we're missing something here. Let's go back 5 steps and let's unpack this a little bit more. Because you reported that you did great with this and that. But what I'm hearing is that there's some barrier to sleep, or there's some barrier to you getting to the gym. Like you sound like you're not able to handle some of these things well mentally, and let's figure out why that might be, and let's figure out some things that we could try, and let's talk to some people that may help us. And here's how I say it to everybody. As you know, there's a connotation. There's this, I don't know, hesitancy to go talk to somebody about your feelings. And there's this, I don't want to go see a psychologist. I don't want to go see a psychiatrist. So I put it this way. I say, look, I've got some specialists in this world who are able to help us build a more robust toolbox and give us some tools to help handle the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I always paint it out. This is not a lie. This is very, very true. I said, look, all of my high-level performers end up going to talk to somebody to see if they can't build a more robust toolbox so they can be better at what they do and handle the things that inherently we're going to have to handle. And all of a sudden it softens a little bit and they say, okay, I'll go talk to somebody. And again, my referral mental health experts are so good. It's as long as I can get them there, they're good. I know they're going to be good. I know they're not going to be. I'm never going back to see that guy. I never hear that. I have such good providers in that world that it's really, I just got to get them in front of that individual. And there's different ways, but I've found the ways that I can do that. I don't ever want to wait till it's dire straits. I never want to wait till it is when we have hit the wall, we have pushed the big red button, like this is an emergency. If I stay proactive on that, just like I would stay with anything else that I do from the physical side of things, then at least they have a chance to address it when it is much easier to optimize.
Well, part of the role of the player coach, because that's going to be what we're going to call the concierge medicine doc especially for athletes here, because you're walking the walk yourself, which I think is great, and you're also able to coordinate care, is to tee it up easy for us to work with these folks. So I got dad jokes for days, but these metaphors are real. And also using metaphors, by the way, is an easy way to connect with your patient population, because that's how we typically work within mental health. It makes it easier to digest, easier to talk about a little bit. But I do, this is a sports specific podcast in a lot of ways. We do talk about wellness and the general population as well. But I do want to hear about your work with athletes. What makes that population unique in your work, especially in concierge medicine?
Man, these individuals, and I've got males and females. I've got guys on the PGA Tour. I've got ladies on the LPGA Tour. It's really cool to see how they have essentially conquered an almost unconquerable game, right? I mean, especially with the golfers, the mental fortitude that these people have to travel. First off, to play the game at the level they play, as maddening. Anyone who's played golf understands how maddening the game of golf can be.
Yeah.
But for them to play the game of golf and then to make a career of playing the game of golf, rise to the top of that career, travel the world, and the stresses of traveling the world, the stresses of managing a team, a caddy relationship, missing a cut by what seems like a million, and then turning around the next week and winning by 7. I mean, it truly is incredible, these individuals and what they're able to do. It's a blessing to be able to work with them, and I learn a lot from them personally. They teach me so much as a provider. But I think the take home point is threefold. One, they've learned how to find comfort in the discomfort because golf is a very uncomfortable game. They've also learned to how to create a team around them and trust that team. Trainers, swing coaches, caddies, family, physio, body work, physician, nutritionist. They rely on a lot of people. And so they're the ones that has to say, okay, I'm getting this from everywhere. I got to have everybody rowing the boat in the right direction. And so I think they're good at fostering good communication. That's something that I find that they do well. And then I mentioned this earlier. When you're going through anything, when you're striving to achieve something, giving yourself some grace goes a long way. These people are really, really, really good at giving themselves some grace and understanding that they are not going to win every week. And that's the thing. Like if you're working with a hockey player or you're working with a basketball player, they're going to win a lot. Golfers, the best win a very, very small percentage of the time. So you have to define winning differently. You have to give yourself grace when you don't win in the general sense of the term, and you have to find this like what we talked earlier, this stepwise progression, this 1% better every day. So those are the those are the three really cool parts about working with golfers specifically that I just am fascinated by, because they do all those things very, very, very well. And it's fun to see it when it comes together. And as a golf nut myself, it's really fun to root for these guys. And it's fun to watch them coming down the stretch on a Sunday in contention. And it's even more fun to see how they respond after a bad week. And it's even more rewarding to see how they respond after a bad season. It's fascinating, and they were always golfers are inherent tinkerers. They're always trying to look for how can I let me adjust the love here. Let me try this shaft there. And so they're natural tinkerers. They want to play with different aspects of their physical health, their supplementation regimen, their nutrition, their training. Obviously, they're doing that with their swing and their putting stroke and their chipping motion, but it's really an enjoyable group to work with, and I can't love it enough. It's a lot of fun and a lot of variety too, because we have to deal with many different aspects of health, and certainly mental health too. There's, as we mentioned, how maddening that game is. I would say of all my athletes, the golfers have the biggest focus on mental health compared to any other athletes I work with.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I think, we could spend time going into every sport and how it's unique, but golfers, they have to, and it's a very isolated sport, which even more emphasizes the need to have that team around them. Where do you fit in that team? I'm curious, like, so are you going to the Masters again this year? You gonna be on site?
Not this year. This year I am going to have to miss it. I will be going to Australia and New Zealand 2 weeks after, so I'm gonna save my dry powder for that trip. But I'll miss the Masters this year. I don't do a lot on site with the guys. All of our work is prep work. All of our work is done in office. All of our work is done, in the gym with the team.
It shouldn't be
There's times
reactive. It should be proactive.
That's right. That's right. I tell people, like, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do for them on property if they've gotten to that point. Like, if it's an injury that, they're going to get an x-ray here. Now, I've done this where a lot of my guys get sick. I had a guy this past weekend in Palm Springs. He, after the first round, he felt like he had a flu-like illness, and we coordinated care and got him some meds, and he finished great. He had a phenomenal finish. He was able to play excellent golf down the stretch, and that happens all the time. Golfers get injured, and I kind of be the quarterback and facilitate them through the different specialists we need for that. If I'm on site, I'm grabbing a beer, enjoying the the golf like everybody else. But I like to do a lot of my stuff in the office. I like to do a lot of my stuff proactively. I like to review their data with them. I like to make sure that their bodies are doing what they need to do with their trainers and their coaches. Big on nutrition as well. I think that's another thing too, is blood sugar stability for these guys is huge. And we do a lot of nutrition work and ensure that they're putting the right things in their bodies as well to perform at the highest level. And then again, keep that blood sugar stable so they can get that mental clarity when they need it most under the gun. We've done some pretty cool
Should
things
everybody
with,
be wearing the blood? You see nurses now walking down the hall wearing these blood
yeah,
sugar
that's what I
monitors.
was just about to say. We've
Oh,
done it with
brother,
some
here we
guys
go.
where we actually put the glucose monitor on them, and we go back retroactively and say, "Hey, when you're coming down the stretch, you're coming down with within one stroke of the lead, and as your cortisol spikes, let's look at what your blood sugar does, so you can learn how to be proactive around that, and you can train for that. Let's look at what happens on a Tuesday." Playing a money game with the boys at the club, and let's look at what that looks like on a Sunday. And then that way it can help us, again, use data to be very proactive for their overall wellness and
And the
performance.
whoops and the wearables, all that, you're using all that stuff, heart rate variability, any data you can get your hands on, huh?
Yeah, until we're not. I think that those things can be great. I think they can also be very anxiety inducing. And I mean that by those things are great to look objectively at an intervention we're making to see if it's getting the intended outcome. They're not great if you wake up every morning and look at your recovery score and you feel great and the thing tells you got a crappy recovery score. And now it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where all of a sudden you're going to go and just kind of mope around all day because the thing told you it wasn't great. I see that all the time. I will put people on, I'll ground them from their wearables at times because we get into that point of view. And I'm like, please, we can listen to our body like we always did. We don't have to have data for everything when it comes this granular if it's causing an issue. So I think they're great until they're not, is my point on that.
Yeah, analysis paralysis. So, okay, you talk about golfers being tinkers and athletes tend to be, very in tune with their physical bodies. What is the most frustrating part of caring for them? Is it because they don't know how to get out of their own way?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there's some aspect of that. I think they're they're always looking for an edge, even when they don't need an edge in the specific I think that sometimes you have to say, "Hey, we're good here. Let's leave well enough alone. Let's look at other things, but that's okay over there." And it's rare, but sometimes we get a little too far down paths like that, and it's like, hey, especially with the Instagram ads now, like, hey, is this thing good for me? Instagram said I needed this. And I'm like, no, you don't need that. You're good. Leave well enough alone. We're set there. My guys are awesome. They trust me implicitly and they know I'll come to them if there's something I think that they need based on their data. But I do like them to be actively engaged with it too, to an extent. I like them to bring stuff to me. I like them to, say, hey, I talked to this guy who's doing this and what do you think about that for me? I enjoy that. Obviously it can be overdone, but most of my guys don't do that. There's not many frustrating, the frustrating aspect of working with guys like this is they don't give me enough strokes when we play together.
That's gold right there. So a lot of these guys, are they setting goals with you for the full year, on what they want to achieve, or is it more short-term limited or a little both?
It's a little of both. I ideally like people to come to me at the beginning of the year with their team and say, hey, here's kind of what the schedule looks like. Here's the tournaments I want to peak for. Here's what I struggled with last year. Let's try to put a plan in place for this. The off season is a really good time for us to kind of get a check in and be like, okay, how what worked well last year, what didn't, what are our goals this year? Depends on where they are. If they're top 50 and can set their schedule and they're hitting all the majors and all the elevated events, it's great. We know what their schedule is going to be like. We can plan around that. For some of the guys on the bubble where they're grinding and they're playing every week, we have to understand, hey, there's going to be some wearing down for you. We need to be able to be proactive on that and take care of ourselves even more and make sure our immune systems are optimized so we don't get sick when it's the fifth tournament in a row and we've got to get a top 20 to be able to keep our temporary conditional status or whatever, it's so much to that. And so I think it's different for everybody, but ideally I do like to look and say, what are our goals for the year? And for some guys, it's like, well, I lose 8 pounds a year when I play. And I'm like, well, let's put you on a DEXA before and after and figure out those 8 pounds are muscle or fat, right? Because that changes what we're going to do. Let's change our macros for that. Let's change our nutrition for that. They're like, hey, I feel like my right hip breaks down at certain points. I'm like, okay, well, let's work with your body team and let's make sure that there's nothing that we're needing to address there. And then from a supplement standpoint, are there things that we can do to reduce inflammation? Are there things nutritionally that can help? That's generally how we like to do it. But again, things pop up and things change too. So we can have that big picture plan, but things may change acutely or schedules may change or, hey, now all of a sudden I got into this opposite field event. Now I got to travel overseas or whatever. And there's stuff to that we have to deal with as well.
Well, goal setting is so important in the work that we do, like even on the mental side of things. You have results-based goals, like things you actually want to hit, like, the objective criteria. Of course, in mental health, the objective is hard to really quantify. It's mostly subjective stuff. But we really work on process goals. And so I remember just the other day, I was meeting with a new patient who we were talking about timelines. I was like, all right, so walk me through this. What is your 1-month goal, 3-month goal, 12-month goal? What are your personal goals, health and wellness? What are your relational goals with your family and friends? And then what are your professional goals? And then made him walk through the 3 process goals within that per topic. Now, it can sound overwhelming at first, but when you really break it down, like even whiteboarded or on paper, it becomes pretty granular and it's easy to follow. I love that you're talking to these athletes and also just your general patient population about goal setting at the beginning and working with them, that why, if you will, because then it's much easier to attain these goals. So I kind of wonder, so you have kind of sounds like you're playing team quarterback with a bunch of specialties around you. Are you using a dietitian or a physical therapist or anybody else to help, or a trainer to come up with some of these process-oriented goals? I mean, you kind of drop the word macro on me, among other things. I do sort of wonder how that's all put together and probably your wellness packet's like, and here we go. Here's the plan.
Yeah, it is. And it's a lot. And I tell people, I'm like, I know this is a lot. It's like if you implement 80% of this, you would be very, very impressed. And I understand that. I'm going to give you some grace on this if you can't. You're not going to get it all this first time. And I hope you do, but you may not. And we're okay with that. There is a lot. I mean, we look at, again, my deals are, it's movement, nutrition, recovery. I mean, all that, there's 5 different subcategories in that.
Yeah.
Your movement patterns, like what are your goals movement wise? What is your muscle mass on the DEXA? What's your visceral fat mass? Are you, adequately muscled, over muscled, undernourished, overnourished? Like those are the nice ways of saying, fat or skinny or whatever. But like we have to know where we're starting, and we have to say, because of that, now here's your plan for protein, calorie intake from a nutritional standpoint. Oh, by the way, you have digestive issues and, you can't tolerate X, Y, or Z. So we're going to have to pull that out. This macro needs to be ramped up. This macro needs to be ramped down. This micronutrients deficient. So we need to supplement that. All of that is in place. Now, I love the fact that we're talking about processes, because all this stuff, it may get us to the intended outcome, but like the process of them doing this is every day you're going to need to wake up, take your supplements. You're going to need to start your day with this meal or this regimen that we've got, or this protein shake. Every day you're going to have to give me your zone 2 cardio when you need it. You're going to have to give me your high intensity cardio when you need it. You're going to have to give me your resistance training when we've planned it. All those things. Guess what? Now you're stressed and you're trying to do your work catching up at night, but like now it's 10 p.m. and we've talked about the importance of 8 solid hours. We've talked about that 30-minute preparation period before sleep to get optimal restorative sleep. And now you're pushing through that. Like those are the processes I need to see, because our outcome's never going to happen unless we commit to those processes. So just like you guys, I think the process goals are so important, and the process can be really boring. It can be really bland because we want the payoff, right? But I try to get people to love the process and fall in love with the process. It sounds like we're channeling Nick Saban here. It's the reason why he's literally the best ever. And Signetti may have something to say about that now too, but he's the same way, right? What is his deal? It's the processes. All the best of the best fall in love with the process. And they're so obsessed with the process, the outcome can't help but take care of itself. And I think that's the take home point in all this is you've got to figure out what your process is. And I think by using guys like yourself, using guys like me, we can help, take that little flashlight on the process and turn it into a lighthouse on the process. Like we can really get them clear processes that they can now own. And once they own it, look out, they're going to get where they want to go.
And it makes it easier. I know it's hard. It's a lot to take on, but not only the insight, the aha that you get from that work, but like it takes some of the guesswork out of it. You're taking a lot of the guesswork out of it because you're always second guessing. Okay, is this the right process? Well, you've gone to an authority of every single piece of data you could ever want. I sound like I'm promoting your practice, but you don't have any openings. So,
well, it's funny.
Well, he's soon going to be the PA at least.
Soon. Well, what's nice about this, I tell people all the time, it's like my financial advice. I put it in his hands. I'm like, dude, what do you want me to do with this? What should I do there? I trust you implicitly. You know what my goals are. What processes do I need to be doing here? And they tell me and I do it. And I just have such peace of mind. And that's how healthcare should be. That's how mental health, physical health, a lot of these things should be. People their core competency. They built a lot of career capital in that world. You better trust them. So just let them tell you what to do, and then take ownership of it and have peace of mind of it, and just trust the process.
Well,
So yeah, I think we're all in the same boat.
I'm going to transition a little bit. Speaking of people who know better than we do, it's our family. It's those that we marry. So you brought it up, so I think it's fair game, right? So what's it like? We're going to get a little personal. Being married to a former D1 athlete who I guarantee, because I knew her before you did, had better processes than you did of tying this together. And how is that? And how does that background as an athlete shape who you are today and kind of how you work?
It's awesome. She's amazing in so many ways, but I think the coolest thing is, to this day, she is still wildly passionate about being the best that she can. She works. People are like, "Oh, what does your wife do?" And I was like, "Oh, does she stay at home with the kids?" I was like, "Yeah, she does, but she works harder than I do." I mean, it's insane. You know how it is, Tommy. We have three. We're not quite to you yet, but her level of ownership of our families, just schedules. There again, we have three competitive junior golfers. Her background, being the oldest of five that all played golf in college, like, it's insane how detail oriented she is and how great she is at getting the best out of our kids and out of our family. And she makes me better because she motivates me. And it's funny, here we are in the snow days, and luckily we have a gym at home, so we're able to get in there and work. And it's like, I'm on the treadmill and she's on the Peloton bike. And, it's like each of us kind of keep ramping it up a little bit. It kind of turns into a little bit of a race and a competition. And it's like, well, I'm going to do that. And so she motivates me. We make each other better. But I think her athletic background and her commitment to excellence just makes her and the family better. And so, again, all the joking aside earlier, I am indebted to you for trusting me to be able to get in front of her for the first meet, and being and vouching for me to her when she was like, "Who is this guy that won't leave me alone?" But yeah, she's great, and I think the Division I athlete, and again, Notre Dame, obviously, where we went to school with Tommy, having that awesome faith-based education that we're able to get into our kids as well too, and the Catholic education has been great, and it's a lot of fun having someone like that around.
I just
family.
thought Sarah Jane would push one of them into tennis. I'm just they're all golfers, which is great.
Yeah, I think, speaking of getting burnt out on things, I think it was a situation where she had plenty of tennis and was like, "Okay, we're on to that. I don't want to go deal with that again."
Yeah.
My wife was a tennis player in college, and so I know that whole burnout thing. Anyway, all right, Tommy, it's the time for the lightning round, buddy.
Mark, I was going to ask you the same thing. So let's have fun with the lightning round. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So we're probably gonna be a lot of golf stuff here. Walking or riding?
Always walking. All my clubs are walking only clubs, so I love
that's what
walking.
you
It's
would also
mentally
say to your
clearing.
patients. Okay.
Yes, right.
What about those little carts we took, Anthony? What were those called? We were down in Dallas, and it was like a motorcycle that we were
Oh yeah,
almost wiped out.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Well, okay. Actually, that's a good question. What are your thoughts on the motorized bags that just drive themselves? That they're almost like AI driven on the course. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, some of my clubs have those. Yeah, some of the individuals like to have that. And at least they're out walking. At least you may not carry their bag, but at least they can do that. So that's a good option too.
All right, next question. Early tee time or a twilight round?
Nothing better than twilight round. Got to get the body nice and warm. Early tee times, it may take me a while to get going. So I like the late twilight round, finishing at sunset, seeing the clubhouse, and then going and sitting in the 19th hole for one with the boys afterwards.
Or both. I like both.
I used to be a twilight round guy, but then I had very young kids, and so now I got to get out before they wake up, and then I can be home by the time at least one's down for a nap or something. That could be helpful.
There you go.
Yep. Range session or playing 9?
Range session. I'm a range rat. I'm a grinder. I like to
the
get
process.
in there and work on the swing. The process.
I feel like we've said that word a few times. All right. One health habit most golfers underestimate.
I think proper nutrition while on course is really important. That's something they need to address, and few beers and a hot dog probably doesn't do you as good as it needs to needs to do for performance. But every now and then it's fun like that. But I think that's the biggest thing is blood sugar stability and proper nutrition on course.
We need to look at what a transfusion does to one's blood sugar. Maybe you have research on that. We can put it in the show notes.
I was literally about to ask the same question, Tommy.
Oh boy, we think the same, Mark, don't we?
Well, that's another reason why we can do why we have to walk, right? We're calorically neutral though. If we walk and carry, we can have one more cocktail or one more beer, if we're walking. So,
what's the biggest mistake that amateurs make with recovery?
Probably just not recovering, probably pushing too hard and getting injured.
Okay. And then harder mentally, a must-make putt or sticking to a long-term wellness plan?
Depends which one you've prepared most for. I think that if you're unprepared for either, they're both going to be difficult. For me, it's really easy to stick to a long-term wellness plan because I'm prepared for it. The must-make putt, I hope I prepare well enough for that, but I may not have the 10,000 hours yet on that.
Yeah. Follow up. So you got a 5-footer. You're standing over it. You visualize this, but here you are in the moment. Pressure's on. Like, what are the thoughts that are going through your head? What is the one thought that you don't want going through your head or creeping in at that point in time?
I try not to think in don'ts. I try to think in do's. So I would say do stick to my process. Do trust the putter hitting the back of the ball square and go for it. I would not want to think about, oh, remember that last time you had this and you missed, or what happens if we don't make this? Once you attach that outcome to it or that negative outcome to it, you're done. So I just process. Just trust your read, put the club on the back of the ball, and let it go in.
I'm just a little callback to a former episode when we had Dr. Carly Hunt on. She's a golf psychologist. She talking specifically about that. She would just say, hey, your process was you've practiced this 1,000 times. All you got to do is roll a ball into the hole. Just roll the ball in the hole. That's her one, like her swing line. So
I love it.
Looking ahead, when you're thinking about the future of medicine, I think in the new wave of primary care, this is how medicine should be practiced in concierge medicine. And, especially for high performers, what do you think needs to change?
I feel that the right data needs to be acquired so it's more personalized. I think that's number one. I think
to get rid of the noise.
Get rid of the noise, make it personalized for you. It's really easy to say, oh, I saw this on Instagram, I saw this on Twitter, or X, whatever. I am distracted by all these options that could be out there. Have the personalized plan for you and stick to it. I think that trusting the team, I think that having a quarterback, having a coach, just like you would with anything, is really important for your health. You have a financial guy, you have an attorney. Why would you not have a healthcare guide or a wellness expert, specifically mental or physical? I think having a team, having a plan, and having data to get that plan is important.
All right, let's close it out. I think this has been a great conversation, Anthony.
It's been great.
Super important conversation. I think you are modeling what medicine can look like when it's proactive, it's personalized. And I think most importantly, just having that human connection that you've had, that we have together, but you bring your personality into your practice. And it's fun to see. And I'm glad you haven't changed over the years. And I think it's just a great reminder that, primary care is foundational to both your physical and your mental health. I mean, you guys are the first stop for patients, whether you're looking at, mental performance or physical performance. So I appreciate your collaboration with us.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. It was really nice meeting you, buddy. I mean, Tommy's been bragging about you for a long time. I could hear just through your tone of voice that you do care about holistic wellness, from talking about being a DO, from choosing that at the beginning to now integrating mental health within your approach. It's refreshing. So that gives me a lot of hope. The fact that you're doing this within the field of sports medicine, I think, is amazing. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us and for the work that you're doing on the front lines of wellness.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And, Tommy, you guys talked about me inspiring you guys. You've always inspired me as well as a husband and a father in the faith and just as a good buddy too. So I look up to you, and the mental health work that you guys are doing is second to none, and it's sorely needed now more than ever. And I think that, y'all are great examples of how doing it the right way can pay massive dividends for people. And it's fun to see the success you guys had. And it's fun to be on the podcast with you.
Amen.